I'm going to cover four things. One is how to write, edit, and format your resume. Two, we'll discuss the interviewing etiquette, how to prepare, and how to tackle common interview questions. We'll also handle how to position yourself for jobs in the off-grid sector, and we will discuss a bit of some of the types of roles you can expect in this sector as well. So to start off, we'll quickly go to the resume part. Now, it's possible for you to have the experience that is required. It's possible for you to have the skills that are required, but without a good resume, sometimes you might not be able to get your foot in the door and get the interview or to interview that organization that you've always wanted to work with. So it's very important, even as you seek for opportunities in the off-grid sector, to ensure that your resume captures all the information that is necessary, that you have the right format as well, that it is presentable and to the standards that are up to date as far as resume is concerned. So, how does a resume look like, or how should a good resume look like? It should cover the following things: have your personal contact information, it should have a profile summary or objective, it should have your work experience, it should have your educational background, your skills, as well as additional experience, and should also have the certificates or any certification or licenses that you have that are relevant to your career or to the position that you are applying for. So we'll cover all this in detail so you know what, when we talk of personal contact information, what are we referring to and what should you also leave out, because personal contact information could mean different things to different people. But in as far as resume is concerned, what are we looking for you to put onto your resume in the form of personal contact information? So in this section, what we would like for you to, or what recruiters normally look out for, is that it should have your name, your phone number, your email, and you should also hyperlink your LinkedIn profile, as well as a profile of your personal website if you have any, or GitHub for those with GitHub, or portfolio. So name, phone number, email, and ensure that your email address is a formal one, and should not be one of those Hotmail or funny email addresses that people tend to use. So those are the things you cover under the personal information bit. You should avoid having things like your marital status, um, your gender or ethnicity in some cases. Just limit it to your name, your phone number, your email, and a link to your LinkedIn profile. Under the profile summary, or what I like to call professional summary as well, this section is just a brief introduction into who you are, what your background is, what you've done, what your skill set, what your skills look like. So it should be very brief and not longer than 50 words. Again, this depends on your level of experience as well. But you should try and make it as brief as possible, and it should cover, or rather highlight your skills and objectives, your career goals, and at least highlight 5 important skills that you have, again, that are relevant to your career. So sometimes recruiters tend to read this bit before they proceed to look at your work experience. So it just gives them a brief into who this candidate is, what their career goals are, and what skill set that they possess. So that's the profile summary bit that we should also be keen to look at. Now, under the work experience section, this place is where you indicate the organizations you've worked for. You cover the duration or the time period that you are there for, and what your position title in this company was. So as you come up with this section of the work experience company, you could opt to have, sorry about that, you could opt to have a link to the company's website should the company be a small organization that may not be well known. So you want the recruiter to be able to click on that link and have a look at the website and at least get to know what the company is about. Or you could choose to just give a sentence or two about what the company does. You can also indicate the location. Where is the company based? Again, like I've mentioned, what was your role or position in this organization? And then how long were you there for in terms of when did you start and when did you finish? When did you stop working for this organization? So this part, again, depending on how many years of experience you have, should be limited to the companies where you've worked for a longer period of time. In the event that you've done short-term contracts, for example, this would come under the additional experience bit that we'll cover at the very end. But to avoid making this too long, just focus on the companies where you've worked for a reasonable amount of time, at least a year plus, is what you cover under the work experience bit. Now, under the work experience, what you're looking to see is use the continuous tense for your current roles, and for the past and for your previous positions, you can use the past tense to describe the duties and responsibilities that you're tasked with in this organization. Excuse me. And you can also, as you indicate your responsibilities, quantify your roles and responsibilities. And when we say quantify, we're talking about indicate, for instance, if you are able to achieve a certain sales target, by what percentage was it? If you're able to make a change with this within the organization, what do the numbers look like? Seek to use data in highlighting your achievements under the work experience section. The other bit we're going to cover is the educational background bit. Now, I'd like to mention that this part could come after the professional summary section, or you can choose to have it at the tail end of your CV, just before the referees section. And under the education, we expect that you list all the institutions you've been able to attend and the certifications that you've been able to attain from these institutions. So share the name of the institution and the year of completion. And if it's an ongoing course, you can also indicate that you're currently ongoing with that course. Indicate, like I've mentioned, the degree or the certificate that was awarded, and you can also indicate the location of this institution. Then we come to the skills part. We're still discussing the resume and how to just ensure that your resume is well organized and that you're able to capture all the relevant information. So under the skills section, recruiters are normally looking for two things: your hard skills and your soft skills. So obviously the hard skills would cover things like software that you're conversant with, again, that are relevant to the position you're applying for. And the technical skills also that you possess. So be keen to indicate all these things, and always take time to also look at the job description. Should there be a skill that has been listed on the job that you're applying for that perhaps you've not indicated on your CV, this would be the time now to edit your CV and capture these skills there. Just make sure you're indicating the skills that you're conversant with, and not just picking it to put it on your CV. You can also indicate the languages that you are fluent in and highlight the level of fluency in these languages. This can always be a bonus in cases where a second language is required in a particular role. Now, this part of the additional experience bit is where I was talking about. It could capture experiences like volunteer experience you've had, either workshops or training programs you've attended, or short-term jobs that you've taken up for less than a year. So you just briefly indicate what the position was, where it was, how long you're there for, and in a line or two, what your responsibilities were. This should be, again, very brief, because we do not want you to end up having a long CV or a CV that has multiple pages. So this just helps to capture should there be any gaps in your work experience bit, you can capture it in this section, or an additional experience that would give you a bonus, again, as you're applying for a role. This would be the area to capture that information. Then we come to certification and membership. Again, it's very important. And with most professions now, we have noticed that the organizations that are giving certifications and licenses that enable professionals to practice in their fields. So indicate these certificates or licenses that you possess in your resume. If you're a member of any professional body, you also want to indicate this on your CV, as well as your membership number. This section is not necessary, so you should only include any of the following if you have it. But again, to give you competitive advantage, it's important to seek to get certifications or licenses in your area of expertise. It's always a plus as you apply for roles. So what are some of the don'ts when it comes to resume? One I have already mentioned is to avoid putting information such as marital status on your CV or your date of birth. This is not necessary and could sometimes create a bias. So just limit it to information that can be used to contact you or that is tied to your professional experience or work experience. Also, there's a lot of talk around bringing into a JD into your resume or trying to optimize your resume. Trying to use a job description word for word for it to look like your resume so that the ATS can pick it. You want to be careful about doing this. Remember, your resume should be a document that you own. So at all times, yes, tweak it to match the job description, but do not have a copy paste situation. That could put off a recruiter as well. Avoid using buzzwords such as team player, hard worker. Nowadays, candidates are moving more towards using competencies to describe the kind of people they are. So you should be familiar with some of these terminologies that are now being used in resumes to add onto the skills bit or to describe you as a professional, but avoid using these outdated terms like a team player and hard worker, as they're no longer attractive in the job market. As much as possible, try not to include a hobby section on your CV. Again, this is not necessary, and I know there could be debate about this, but where possible, do avoid adding a hobby section on your resume. I'm gonna straight go to formatting your resume now. What format should it be in? Which font should you use? So it's advisable to use the Times New Roman or Arial, and then the font size should be 12. And when it comes to spacing, you could use a single line for a lot of content or 1.5 if the resume is a short one. And try as much as possible for your resume not to be longer than one page. And where that cannot be avoided, you can limit it to at least 2 pages. Always take time to spell check your resume for any grammatical errors. Again, you do not want to have a nicely formatted resume, but with numerous spelling mistakes. So try and avoid this. It's also important to remember to save your resume as a PDF with both your names and not as a copy of resume 003. So always be keen to look at such small details. They could be costly in your application. You can also run your resume through websites and tools such as resumeworded.com that will help score your resume and can give you suggestions on where to make changes. The last bit you're going to cover under resume is the references bit. Now, this section, you could choose to indicate that you'll provide references upon request, but if you've already spoken to your referees and they are okay for you to go ahead and put them on your resume, you can do so and include their contact details. At least have 3 referees on your resume. That's the recommended number, and should the organization you're applying for need more, they can always inquire that from you. So that's the bit about the CV. I'm gonna pause there for a bit. And see if there's any questions in the group before we proceed to the next bit.
Maybe not a question, but as we wait for the questions to come up, you could also put it in presentation mode so that it's also a bit larger and more clearer for the people to see.
All right, great. I see Collins, your hand is up.
Yes, good morning from this part. All right, it's an interesting one. And first, I want to just say thank you for this well delivered, and it's been very helpful. But my question is just on the area of LinkedIn. Sorry, I didn't come in on very much on time, so I didn't get that part. You talked about LinkedIn relation to the CV. So I just need a clarification on that side because I know it's very important. So I believe something you stated there will be helpful to me too.
All right, thank you, Collins. Is there another question before I respond to Collins's question real quickly? Yes, Abdul.
Okay, thank you. I have 2 questions. The first one is with reference to the observation you made that our CVs should not be more than 2 pages. That may be possible for those who are just entering the market. For someone who has experience, maybe up to 20 years or even less, the CV might have to be long because of the list of certifications and so on and work experience. So it may be difficult to limit it to 2 pages because it will contain an enormous amount of information that will be more than 2 pages. That is one. So what are we going to do? Secondly, is that there are some formats that we have, CV formats or resume formats. We have the EU format. We have different formats from different bodies. So some of these formats do not follow the format you have explained. Now, if we are applying to such organizations, are we expected to follow their format strictly, or we can use any other format? Thank you.
All right, thanks, Abdul. So I'm going to respond to those two questions real quick. So Collins, on the LinkedIn question, we mentioned as we started that you should include a link or hyperlink your LinkedIn profile on your resume. We've not really discussed how your LinkedIn profile should look in detail. However, we have information we can share on how you can go about creating your LinkedIn profile, and we should be able to share that with the team at the end of this call. So that should provide a guide on how your LinkedIn profile should look like. But as far as your resume is concerned, it's important to have a link on your CV that can direct the recruiter or the employer to your LinkedIn profile. That's the bit we discussed regarding LinkedIn. To your question, Abdul, with the more years of experience you have, that means now when you're listing your duties and responsibilities, it's not about what you're tasked with. Now you're discussing your achievements as opposed to what your responsibilities were. Because the more years of experience you tend to get, the more complex the tasks become and the more diverse your role becomes. So you tend to limit the amount of responsibilities you list on your CV and now just capture them as achievements. So there could be 4 or 5 achievements for the organizations you've worked for. Again, like I mentioned, there are tools and websites where you can be able to paste your CV and they'll be able to compress it for you so that it's not too long. The truth is a recruiter in a given day goes through a number of CVs, very many. And so it's not advisable to have a longer CV because then they might not get to the tail end of it. So you only want to capture the information that is relevant. And that is possible, even with 20 years of experience. It's possible to have actually 2-paged CV. The other question you asked was about format. Now, the formats could be different. And yes, when you're applying to organizations like EU, do use their format. But remember, the information on your resume is still the same. They still want you to discuss your skill set. They still want you to capture your profile summary. They still want you to indicate your work experience in a certain way. So the content remains the same, but the format does change. So in such cases, do use the format that is recommended for such organizations. I hope I've answered the questions. I don't know if I missed anything, Jess.
No, you've tackled the questions asked.
Fantastic. So in the interest of time, the rest, please do type your questions on the chat. We'll come back to it.
Okay.
All right, great. So we'll continue to the next bit, which is interview etiquette, preparation, and tackling common interview questions. So when we talk about interview, sorry about that. Okay. All right, great. So when you talk about interview etiquette, it starts from the minute where you receive the invite to an interview. You need
Janet,
to. Yes.
sorry to interrupt you, but we've lost your share screen.
Okay, one moment. Can you see it now better?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, we can see.
Apologies for that. So, like I was saying, it starts from the minute where you receive the interview invite. You need to respond immediately you receive it and just confirm that you've received it and confirm your availability. At this point, let me mention that you don't always have to go with the time indicated by the interviewer should it not be convenient for you. And I say this so that you don't feel like you do not have a voice whenever an interview invite is sent, you can always propose a time that you feel is convenient. But what you do not want to do is choose not to respond to an invite or respond to it late. Just always confirm your availability or suggest another convenient time when you can be available for the interview. And in your response, express your interest in the position so that the interviewer also knows that you are eager and looking forward to learn more about this job. Do confirm the details of the interview so that you're sure of things like time, date, and the location. Will it be a virtual interview? Will it be a physical interview? You need to be aware of these things ahead of time. And obviously do your research about the organization, about the role, so that you are better prepared and you also understand their culture and what it is they're looking for. This will inform even some of the responses you give during the interview. Remember to dress professionally, and this applies whether the interview is virtual or in person. You do want to look presentable. First impressions are always very important. And at all times, of course, do keep time. If it's a virtual interview, join the call at least 5 minutes ahead of time. If it's physical, be there in good time so that you, again, make a good impression. And remember to be polite and professional to the people you meet during the interview, from the gate man to the receptionist, up to the point where you finally get to meet your interviewer. And we've talked about being prepared and doing your research and show enthusiasm for the job. So that, again, like I've said, it gives a positive vibe even to the person interviewing you. And the enthusiasm can be showed in different ways, making eye contact, smiling, asking questions that are relevant to the position. Just showing that you're interested to learn more about the job is always a plus. Now, in the case of a virtual interview, there are also certain things that you are required to do so that you are well positioned for the job. Confirm the tools that will be used or the video conferencing software that will be used. Is it Google Meets? Is it Teams? Is it Zoom? So that if you do not have prior experience using these things, then ahead of time you can do practice or do your research so that you're conversant with these platforms. You've had cases where you're being told to mute or to unmute, and because this is a software perhaps you've not used before, you struggle and you waste 5 minutes or so in the call, and that sometimes does leave a bad taste with the interviewer. So ensure that you're aware of the tools that will be used. Do test your devices ahead of time, whether it's your earphones or your headphones or your camera or your microphone. Just ensure that everything works well. It's important to have a power backup source should power decide to disappoint you midway in the interview. And that goes also for the internet connection. Ensure you have a backup just in case you do lose internet or Wi-Fi in the process of the interview. And we've already discussed about dressing professionally. Check your background for the video. You do not want any distractions when you're doing a virtual interview or you have people passing behind or there's so much going on at the back. You want the focus to be in the conversation you're having. So you want to eliminate all distractions. So ensure that the background is conducive. Ensure you're also in a quiet and conducive environment for the interview. As much as possible, when you're having virtual interviews, join with your camera on unless instructed otherwise. And we've also discussed punctuality. So that is it as far as interview etiquette is concerned, both for physical interview and virtual interview. Now, how do you respond to interview questions? You've made it to the interview and they pose questions to you. So something you need to be aware of is a lot of organizations right now are doing something we call competency-based evaluations. So this is where they ask questions that are seeking for you to give an example of a scenario of where something happened. So for instance, they can tell us how you were able to save the company money. For example, if you're interviewing for an accountant or a finance manager position. And how you want to be able to respond to such questions is using the STAR technique. So what is the STAR technique? S in the STAR technique stands for situation. So here you need to be able to describe the context or the event. What exactly happened? What was the problem you're seeking to solve? Or what was the project you are working on? Then T stands for the task. What was your responsibility in this situation? What are you required to do? And then A stands for action, where now you describe what steps did you take? How did you go about resolving the problem or completing the project? And lastly, what were the results of your actions, or what did you achieve, or what did you learn from the whole experience? So that is how you should seek to answer questions in an interview. You explain the scenario, you talk about what your responsibility or role or task was in that scenario. You explain what actions or steps you took, And finally, you finish by highlighting what the results or the outcome of your actions were and the lessons that you learned from it. So that technique would really go a long way in helping you answer questions. It also gives you the confidence because you're able to clearly use a scenario you can relate to the question in responding, and this just makes it easier for you to respond and also for the interviewer to perfectly understand your response to their questions. I hope that is clear. And now we go to some of the popular interview questions that some candidates struggle with, some are very good at, which is good. But how should you go about responding to these questions? And the first one is, please tell us about yourself. It seems like a very simple question. It is a very simple question, but most people don't get it right because you want to introduce or talk about so many things that are not relevant. Whereas this question usually is just looking for the following: a brief introduction of your name and your current position. You can mention your educational background and the degrees or certificates or certifications that you have. Then you touch a bit on your work experience, which organizations you've worked for. Again, please notice I'm saying briefly because the probing questions would come at the end. So, you talk about which companies you've worked for and what positions you held there. You list the skills that you possess that are directly applicable to that role. And finally, you talk about your passion and motivation for the role and what your career goals are, long-term career goals, and how this position would be a great fit for the long-term career goals that you have. So that is simply how you answer tell us about yourself question. That is all the interviewer needs to know. It has nothing to do with how many siblings you have, what your hobbies are. It's just a summary of you professionally and what your goals are and what you are aspiring for. I hope that now helps those of us who normally struggle with these questions to be better placed to respond to it. The other question that most people struggle with is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Now, you need to be able to identify ahead of the interview 2 to 3 strengths that are relevant to the job that you're applying for, because you want to be able to highlight this. So choose the strengths that align with the company values or the requirements of the role that you're applying for. You also need to be able to discuss weaknesses that you have identified and are actively working on. A weakness could be even a skill that you're currently polishing. So you're taking a training or a course to be able to be better at that skill. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to overthink this area. This just have to be things that you've identified. I have a gap in this area and this is what I'm doing, or this is how I'm working towards becoming better at it. So that's how you answer the strengths and weaknesses question. So you just need to be self-aware and also show commitment to improvement as you respond to this question. So discuss the steps that you are taking or have taken to overcome your weaknesses, and highlight, of course, like we've mentioned, the 2 to 3 strengths that are relevant to the position that you're applying for. The other question also that candidates sometimes find hard to respond to is the salary expectation question. Now, I always encourage candidates to go in with a range when responding to this question, and be confident as you do this. It's important for you to strike a balance and be realistic as well as you respond to this question. So even ahead of your interview with this organization, carry out a research to understand the average salary for such a position. How much would it be based on the industry and of course where the role is located? You should also look at factors like your experience, your qualifications, and what you'd be required to do in this position. Look at things like the package. How does the compensation package look like? Are they giving any other benefits? Is there a bonus? Is there opportunity for growth and development? All this will inform your response to the salary expectation question. But as much as possible, try and ensure that you provide a range that is broad enough to allow for negotiation, but also specific enough to provide for a reasonable expectation. So that is how you respond to the salary expectation question. The other question is, what is your motivation to work with this company? So it's important, like we said, for you to do a research about the organization. That way you'll be better placed to respond to this question because you understand their mission, you understand their goals, you've done your research, so you know what they're looking for in a candidate, and you know what you're looking for as well as a candidate to be able to join this organization. So be specific as you indicate your motivation. Don't just say you want it because it's a good company, it has a good name, but what exactly has drawn you to want to join them? Is it the work that they do? Is it their culture? Is it how they're changing lives? So be specific about how you respond to this question. And then lastly, an interviewer will always ask if you have any questions at the end of the interview. It's important to have one or two questions. It's not mandatory, but again, it's encouraged that at the end of the interview, you can ask a question or two, again, to just show your interest and enthusiasm for the role. It could be as simple as what the opportunities for growth are within that company, or what the next steps in the interview process look like, or what the role, what this position they're interviewing for would be looking to solve in the organization. So always prepare at least one or two questions to be able to ask the interviewer at the end of the interview. And those are the 5 questions we thought we would discuss, that we find candidates tend to struggle with, yet they seem quite simple. So I hope that helps you for your next interview, so you're able to respond to those questions. I'm going to pause there for a bit. There's a question on the chat. What is your take on picture on CV? Jess, would you like to respond to this one?
Yes. I hope you can all hear me. Abiodun, so when it comes to picture on CV, there are varied opinions when it comes to that. You have people who do it. However, from a psychological point of view, you wouldn't want to put yourself in, excuse me, put yourself in a position where you open yourself up to unconscious bias, right? Or any form of bias from either the recruiter's point of view or the client's point of view. So if you can, just remove it. There's no need to add it. That's my professional opinion.
Thank you, Jess. And I agree. Again, you want to limit the amount of biases that your CV can attract. So where possible, you can choose not to have it. And should you choose to have it, it doesn't need to be those full photos that people put. Just a headshot would do. Another question from Nelias: Is it advisable to ask how you fared in the interview? This is an interesting one. I've seen people ask me at the end of the interview, is there an area you'd like for me to improve? Could you give me feedback? So yes, it is. You could ask it. Just depends on how you frame it or how you phrase it. So it's just you asking if they are areas that the interviewer has identified, and if they're able to provide feedback on the spot on how you can be better moving forward when taking part in interviews. So you can go ahead and ask. There's no harm in that at all. We'll proceed to the next bit. The date of birth, sorry, Nelias. The date of birth, what if the job requirement had an age bracket? So normally, and what a lot of companies are now doing in the cases where they are limiting their jobs to particular age groups, they will ask these questions during the application process. You'll be asked to indicate your age there. But if they haven't asked for it, you don't need to put it on your CV yet. It's a question you can be asked during the pre-screening bit, so you can put it there, but on your CV, as much as possible, avoid having it there. All right. We'll continue. So, how do you position yourself for jobs in the off-grid sector? Now, the first and most important thing is to network with people in this sector. Networking is a great way to learn about job opportunities and to make connections. And there are very many ways through which you can network. And right now, there are very many communities that you can be able to join, where you can meet professionals like yourselves, or people who can just be able to link you up to opportunities or help you grow in your sector. And at this point, I'd like to announce that Shortlist launched its platform last week, which is the ACCN. So you can join this platform where you'll be able to get industry information, you'll be able to meet experts, you'll be able to see job opportunities. And this is just a great way for you to network. And there's so many other platforms or communities online that you can be able to join. At the end of the day, networking we cannot emphasize this enough. So do network as much as possible. And then, of course, seek to build your skills and knowledge in your area of expertise. So in addition to getting the right education and training, also seek to continue growing in your field. What courses are there? What certifications are people currently taking? What online free courses exist if finances could be a problem? Are there free courses online that you can take, or workshops that you can attend, or conferences that you can attend? Seek to build your skills and knowledge around the off-grid sector. And there's also an interesting platform, very informative one for that you can also be able to learn about this sector. It's called terra.do. We'll be able to share this link with you again at the end of the call, so you can be able to join this platform as well. Become an expert in a specific area. If you want to be competitive, it's important that you specialize. It's a good idea to become an expert. So of course, have the general knowledge, but choose to specialize in an area where you feel you're very strong in. This obviously will give you competitive advantage when it comes to applications. Then consider getting certifications. We've discussed this, it's important, and it's now across different functions. Certifications is becoming something that's now mandatory for most professionals. So do identify any certifications that you can be able to get or take that will also be added on top of your bachelor's degree or your master's degree, and that will give you a bonus as well when it comes to application. Be passionate about the off-grid sector. A lot of employers in this sector are looking for people who are passionate, because it's a sector that is heavy on impact, heavy on changing lives and impacting lives in different parts of the world. So you have to, beyond just working in the sector, you have to be able to show that you are passionate about it and passionate about the mission and the vision that it seeks to achieve. And then the other one is signing up on job boards. And on this part, a lot of us have signed up on job boards, but you find that most of us do not have updated profiles on these job boards. So what I mean is, you created a profile in 2018, you uploaded a CV, and since then you've not gone back to update the CV that you uploaded on that job board. You've not gone back to edit the details, because of course things have changed since 2018 and now. So if you are signed up on any job board, it's important that you ensure your details on these job boards are up to date. So that way, whenever you apply for a job, the recruiter or the hiring manager is able to see an updated CV, is able to see an updated profile, and they're able to see where you currently are in your career and understand why you would wish to make a move. So do sign up on the platforms that provide opportunities in this sector, and they're numerous. We've listed some of them here. And like I've mentioned, Shortlist now has one, Africa Climate Careers Network, where you can have access to numerous job opportunities for different organizations in this sector as well. So do take advantage of that. So I'll stop at that and now take questions. Thank you, Jess, for sharing that as well. Do you have any questions from the audience?
Yes, there's a question that Amos had shared earlier. Is it advisable to call the organization later as a follow-up for outcome after the interview?
Now, this depends. Like we mentioned, one of the questions you can ask after your interview is when you can expect to hear feedback. So if they did say 1 week or 2 weeks, and then this period has passed and you've not heard from them, yes, you can go ahead and call, or alternatively choose to write an email to whoever had reached out to you to find out the progress or the status of your application. So you should never shy away, but just be sure to do it within the time frame they had indicated that they would be giving you feedback. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand or unmute or type. All right. Looks like there are no questions. I've seen a number of requests that we do share the slides at the end of the of this session. We will certainly do that, so you can be able to refer to this information at whatever time. If no other question, can I hand it back to you, Jess?
Yes, I was just sharing the job board that you mentioned earlier, and there it is. All right. Okay, I'm glad to see that already there are tips that you have taken, and you're already applying, and you see some of the changes that you can make personally. And I believe I can open the space to the general audience. Are there any questions, anything you've had in your experience, either from work or even during your postgraduate or undergraduate, that you often find it as a myth? I think this would be a really good opportunity to ask us recruiters that we're here and can be able to clear up any confusion. All right. As you're waiting for the questions, I think I can give a brief introduction to who we are as an organization and what we do. I know we went straight into the session, and I think that's what brought us here. We are a recruitment firm based in Nairobi, Kenya, that operates in two business lines: the executive search, that does customized end-to-end recruitment for senior level roles across the globe. And we also have another business line called Shortlist Futures. And this is where Janet, Agnes, and myself sit in. And what we do is we design and implement youth talent programs that support employer companies in the clean energy and digital economy space with provision of quality talent, and provide those opportunities to job seekers and talent across the continent. How we do that is through the youth employment programs that we run. We have two under the clean energy sector: the Women for Green Jobs program, that aims to place 750 women into clean energy opportunities across 7 countries: Kenya, Nigeria, Uganda, Malawi, Sierra Leone, Ethiopia, and the DRC. And this is because, as a sector, we understand that women only cover 32% of the general workforce in the sector. And so we are trying to not only promote awareness of opportunities that there are careers and development within the sector, but also to increase representation of women in predominantly male dominated roles. The second program is the Energy Access Talent Initiative program that seeks to place 800 men and women into job opportunities across sub Saharan Africa. We have a mandate to be in at least 26 countries, and that's supporting both companies and job professionals in getting the right opportunities. Aside from the programs that we run, we are also looking to create a community of climate and clean energy enthusiasts and professionals who are looking to not only engage with like minded as we work towards a common purpose, but also to provide value to people who may not get the job at that particular time, but finding different areas where they can plug into, either through such webinars where we're providing value add in terms of job skills, work readiness, or even engaging with other like minded individuals, and also providing opportunities in terms of jobs, not just through the job programs that we're running, the youth employment programs that we're running, but also through the climate job board that I have just shared on the chat, where you have access to all current and job openings in Africa, as long as they're climate related. So if you're interested in joining the Africa Climate Careers Network, I've shared the link where you can be able to sign up, and our team will be able to reach out to you as soon as possible to join the platform. And yeah, if there are no further questions, thank you so much, Leslie, for organizing this. It's always great to be able to partner and work and collaborate with other T beneficiaries, and this has been fantastic. And thank you to such an engaging session and an engaging audience. The questions also gives us an idea and more insights to how we can be able to provide more value and iterate the session so that we can always be supporting people as they put their best foot forward and work towards getting the right job of their dreams. I think there's a question from Noel. In a case where we have different work experiences and we're applying for a specific sector, is it advisable to include other non-related experiences to the role, or do we only fine-tune our resume to the specific job we're applying for so that it doesn't seem like we're providing unnecessary info? Janet, would you like to take this?
Yes, and I like that Noel has asked the question and even provided an answer at the end. So Noel, you're right. It's important to fine tune your resume to the specific job that you're applying for, but not to say that the other experience you have would be you would not have a place to put it on your CV. Remember, we talked about the other work experience or additional experience. You could choose to tuck it in there, but at the very top of the work experience, choose to fine tune it to show case your interest in the energy sector. So again, this is also where the free online courses that you've taken could reflect on your CV. Again, just to show these people that you are interested in joining the sector and you've taken steps in this direction, that even though you've not actively or fully worked in the sector, you've been interested in taking courses, in participating in workshops and in conferences. So do fine tune it so that it's relevant to the position that you're applying for. I hope that answers your question, Noel.
All right. Following this.
Sorry, sorry, please. Just a follow-up question that just came to my mind from Noel's question. Now, on the part of the work experience session in the CV, now if I'm applying probably for an energy sector, and now I'm deeply involved in energy sector, but my present experience is not there. Now, when she was explaining, Janet was explaining, we're supposed to list, I think the work experience is supposed to be from the current. So is it proper for me now? I'm applying for a job in the energy sector. My current experience is not directly in energy sector. So I mean my current place of work. So that's what I'm supposed to write first. So how do I go about that? Because the person is seeing maybe a maintenance technology somewhere, but this job mainly is for an energy sector. I don't know if you get the question.
Yes, just you want to take that one?
Yes, I will. So when it comes to the energy or the clean energy sector, we often look at it in twofold, right? We come across a myriad of roles that could be classified as technical, and then there are others that could be classified as non-technical roles. And these are more often back-end roles such as HR, finance, and maybe more front-facing roles, sales, operations, logistics, etc. On the technical roles, the technicality bit of it would mean that you need to have either the technical background, either through schools, either through certifications, or relevant proven experience that shows that you are not only capable of doing the job, but you have done the job. And that would, of course, mean that you have either done certifications or you've gone to school, or there's elements in your CV or resume that show that you can, the capability and ability to do the job. For the non-technical roles, we often advise candidates to look at what are the transferable skills in your current or previous experience that you can accurately highlight to show that you may not have been in the sector, but you have certain elements that you can bring forward that show that you can do the job. It's that's how I would phrase it. And then also, if there's elements or resources or skills or courses free that you can use to bring yourself up to speed to show your understanding of the sector and the technicality of the sector itself, that will give you an edge around above other people. So those are some of the tidbits that I would share with you.
right. Thank you.
Happy to help. All right, if there are no further questions, we are happy to share with you a summarized version of the session that we've just done, as well as the link to the sign up, network sign up, and the job board. And of course, a link to the job opportunities that we have currently available under the Energy Access Talent Initiative program. And with that, thank you so much for such an engaging session, and we look forward to meeting you all on the climate network platform. Right. Cheers. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.